if you want to use Python, you either have a very, very, very specialized use case where you already have a bunch of people doing Python, you're using Django or some of the other tools, or you really want to get into machine learning. Python is actually, I had to look this up, the most widely used programming language in the world. Differences between Python 2 and Python 3, this kind of is what it is, but if you're doing machine learning, that is where the data science community has stood its ground and said, this is our choice. It's where research is. There's so many different libraries and tools. Pretty much anything that you do of substance in machine learning is going to be in Python. There are .NET versions of some of the libraries. There are some Java versions, but no one really uses those. It's all gonna be in Python. So Python is a slightly different animal than what most people are used to if they're accustomed to Java or they're accustomed to C#. Library management is always kind of difficult. Do you want to use pip? Do you want to use Anaconda? Which, if you are, you have to pay them a license. So most people use Conda instead. The requirements of the machine are actually much greater if you're doing data science with Python. You might have a nice laptop that works well enough for software development. Chances are it might not work very well for data science. You have to have a GPU with a massive amount of memory. You have to have enough free RAM to be able to load these models into memory so that they can be trained on your machine. There are some just practical concerns for how much horsepower, so to speak, a developer's machine has. But then there's also the CI/CD side of it, actually building and deploying it. One of the most common attack vectors that I'm seeing where people are getting into these trained models and kind of fiddling with them and making them produce nefarious code is the fact that the weights for these models are actually stored in plain text. So you have to have a really robust set of governance if you're doing Python on who has access to these CI/CD systems. You have to do, the usual checksums. You have to have a security operations center that's monitoring the logs. And you also have to make sure that the source data that all of these Python models are trained on is secure. There's actually tools out there called Nightshade and Glaze, if I remember right, where people are putting them inside of images so that if they get included in a training set for one of the new versions of ChatGPT or DALL-E, it'll actually poison the model and it won't be able to actually produce the images that they want. So having a good grasp of your training data, making sure that if you do have any personally identifiable information in there, that it's secured and that developers don't have access to it. And because of that, you also have to have a de-identified version that developers do have access to. There's just so many little things that come up that are slightly different for Python and machine learning in general than pretty much any other language. And it's because of those nuances, we see a lot of people struggle. And if you want some free advice, just give me a ring. I've done this before. I've made a lot of the mistakes. I've seen a lot of people make the mistakes. And one of my personal missions in life is to make sure that there's no more obvious mistakes that people make, that if I can help them and they be more successful, we all benefit from it.